So in the last video, we talked about how to study the Bible more effectively, and I wanted to give an example of that coming out of Matthew chapter 13, the parable of the sower. Let's put this into practice. So we talked about 3 levels of questions as we investigate the text and try to come to an understanding of the biblical text. The first level of questioning, as we sit down and read a text, say we read Matthew chapter 13, 1 through 9, the parable of the sower, we're going to start asking ourselves first detail questions. Just what information is there? Nothing digging under the surface, just what does it say? Second level of questions are interpretation questions. What does this text mean? And the third level of questions are application questions. What am I supposed to do with this? What does this teach me specifically today? How does this verse, how do these verses, this passage change my life, make my life different, make my relationships different, my actions different, my thinking different? So let's look at the parable of the sower in Matthew chapter 13. And I would read this several times through until I felt comfortable enough to understand the details and really be able to tell the story in my own words. It says, "That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into the boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. And then he told them many things in parables, saying, A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell among the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear." So this is something we might read 2 more times, 3 more times, 4 more times until we feel like we have the story really in our minds, and we begin asking questions of who's speaking. Jesus is speaking. Who's he speaking to? Crowds who are standing on the shore. He's speaking from a boat. It says that he told a parable, and the parable had a farmer. He has a bag of seed. He's sowing the seed, which is scattering it, throwing it on the ground. He describes the ground. There is rocky ground, thorny ground, shallow soil ground, and then there's good soil. And ultimately, when it lands on the good soil, it produces an amazing crop, exponential growth. So we talk about the details. What does it say? Because we can't interpret something if we don't know what it says. Sometimes we come to the Bible with our interpretation already in hand, and we're trying to force the Bible to say something or really mean something that it doesn't really mean. So next we go to our interpretation questions. What does this text mean? So who is this farmer? It's all symbolic. Who is this farmer? In its original context, this seems to me this farmer is Jesus. What is the seed? It's the gospel. It's the word of God. And the farmer, Jesus, is scattering this seed. He's preaching. He's teaching. He's proclaiming the good news of the kingdom out to the people as he scatters this seed onto people. That is what the soil is. Our next question would be, what is this soil? It's the hearts of people. And the word of God is coming upon us. We're listening to it, and it's going into us. And what we're composed of and what our heart is made of and how receptive we are is going to depend on several factors. And this gets into what are the thorns, what are the weeds, what are the rocks. If we are the different types of soil, what are the things in our lives that begin choking this out? Now, at that point, we're moving from interpretation to stage 3, which is application. How does this change my life? How does it affect my life? How does it impact my life? What kind of soil am I? Am I good soil? Am I rocky soil? Is my soil shallow? Is it full of weeds? What kind of weeds do I have in my life? Sins, addictions, compulsions, bad relationships, angry, prideful, whatever it may be. These are the rocks. These are the weeds. These are the thorns that keep the gospel from penetrating into all the areas of my life. What areas of my life am I holding God at arm's length on? And as we begin considering those things, we begin asking ourselves, how might my life change in order to help my life be good soil? And I encourage you to begin reading the Bible. Go back to that previous video on how to read the Bible more effectively, how to study the Bible more effectively. And in our daily reading, please be in the Bible every single day. And as we do that, you can start asking these 3 levels of questions, from the details to the interpretation to the application, and then apply it. Jesus said at the end of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 7 that the wise man is the man who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. So be a wise man, be a wise person, a wise woman of God, and put these things into practice. God bless.